Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if freedom is not the hardest part? What if staying free is? That's where the book of Exodus begins. Not with miracles, not with fire from the sky, but with oppression. Exodus opens with a nation in chains. The descendants of Abraham, once welcomed, are now enslaved. They didn't suddenly become weak. They became useful. And when people become useful, power starts controlling them. That's not ancient history. That's human behavior. Egypt in Exodus is not just a place. It's a system that values production over people, a system that fears growth, a system that tightens control when threatened. When the Israelites multiply, Pharaoh doesn't celebrate. He panics, because power is afraid of what it cannot control. Here's the disturbing truth Exodus shows early. Oppression doesn't start with violence. It starts with fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of change. Fear of the other. And fear always looks for justification. Pharaoh decides the solution is force, hard labor, crushed dignity, erased identity, and eventually, the order to kill newborn boys. That's how fear escalates. Exodus then introduces a child meant to die. Moses, saved not by strength, but by courage. Women make the bravest moves in this story. A mother who refuses to give up. A sister who watches. A foreign princess who chooses compassion over policy. Oppression cracks through small acts of resistance. Moses grows up between two worlds, Hebrew by birth, Egyptian by education. That tension shapes him. He doesn't belong fully anywhere. And that matters, because leaders who change systems often don't fit comfortably inside them. Moses sees injustice and reacts impulsively. He kills an Egyptian, and immediately, everything collapses. He runs into obscurity, into the desert. For decades, Exodus teaches something uncomfortable here. Calling doesn't cancel consequences. Passion without wisdom can destroy you. Moses had a sense of justice, but not control, and the desert becomes his teacher. Years later, when Moses is forgotten by history, God speaks. Not in a palace, not through power, through a burning bush that doesn't burn out. That image matters. Power that doesn't consume. Authority without destruction. God doesn't tell Moses he'll feel confident. Moses actually resists. I'm not qualified. I'm not a speaker. I'm not the right person. That honesty is refreshing. Exodus doesn't glorify fearless leaders. It shows reluctant ones. Then comes the confrontation. Moses versus Pharaoh. Freedom versus control. But notice this carefully. God doesn't destroy Egypt immediately. He gives warnings, opportunities to release control. Pharaoh refuses. Again and again. Power rarely lets go peacefully. The plagues are not random punishment. They are exposure. Each plague attacks something Egypt trusted. Nature, economy, religion, authority. Exodus is dismantling false gods one by one. Pharaoh's heart hardens. That phrase troubles people. But Exodus is clear. Hardness grows through repeated refusal. Power doesn't become cruel overnight. It practices. Finally, the moment of breaking. The cost of control becomes unbearable. Freedom is demanded, and Egypt collapses under its own resistance. The Exodus itself is dramatic. See, pursuit, panic. And here's something important. The people who cried for freedom panic the moment fear returns. Freedom is exciting until responsibility appears. Once they escape Egypt, Egypt doesn't escape them. They complain. They doubt. They want to go back. Slavery was familiar. Freedom is uncertain. That's psychologically accurate. Exodus shows something most freedom stories hide. Liberation is fast. Transformation is slow. In the wilderness, the people face hunger, fear, uncertainty, and God provides daily, not storage, not excess, daily, which forces trust, dependence, presence. Then comes the law, and many people misunderstand this part. The law is not control. It's structure. Former slaves don't know how to live free. They need boundaries. Freedom without structure becomes chaos. The Ten Commandments are not random rules. They are a blueprint for human dignity. Limit power. Protect life. Honor truth. Respect boundaries. These laws shaped entire civilizations. But here's the most uncomfortable part of Exodus. While Moses is receiving guidance, the people build a golden calf. They replace invisible trust with visible comfort. That happens fast. Fear demands something it can see. Exodus doesn't hide failure. It shows how quickly humans trade freedom for familiarity, even when familiarity hurts them. Moses comes down angry. Broken tablets, broken trust. But the story doesn't end there. Because Exodus is not about perfection, it's about persistence. God doesn't abandon the people. He stays, guides, corrects, leads. That's important. Failure doesn't cancel relationship. The rest of Exodus is about presence. A tabernacle, a place where God dwells among people. Not distant, not unreachable, present. And that's how Exodus ends. Not with war, not with dominance, with presence in the middle of the journey. Here's the deeper meaning of Exodus. It's not just about leaving slavery. It's about learning how not to recreate it. Inside yourself, in your systems, in your relationships. Exodus explains why freedom is scary, why power resists change, why people return to what once hurt them, why laws exist, why presence matters more than comfort. If Genesis explains who we are, Exodus explains why we struggle with freedom. And that's why Exodus still matters. Because modern life has different chains, but the same fears, the same power struggles, the same longing for liberation. Exodus doesn't promise an easy path. It promises that freedom is worth the cost, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's slow, even when people resist it. And maybe that's the most honest thing about this book. Freedom is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of responsibility.